David, Joseph, Gideon, Samuel, Solomon, Moses, Jesus. What do they all have in common? None of them were supposed to be the one. Every single person on that list was overlooked, bypassed, or forgotten before God stepped in. And this pattern does not happen once or twice in the Bible. It happens across every book, every generation, and every major turning point in the entire story of Scripture. Today, we are going through all of it. Let us go.
There is a pattern hidden inside the Bible that most Christians have read their entire lives without ever fully seeing. It is not hidden in obscure passages or difficult Hebrew words. It is hiding in plain sight, across the most famous stories in the entire Bible. Stories you have heard since Sunday school. Stories you could probably tell from memory. But when you line them up, one after another, you start to see something that cannot be a coincidence. Because it happens once, you might call it a story. It happens twice, you might call it a theme. But it happens more than a dozen times across every major section of the Bible, from Genesis all the way to the New Testament. And at that point, you have to stop and ask a question that most preachers have never preached a full sermon on. Why does God almost never use the firstborn? Why does he consistently, deliberately, and repeatedly bypass the expected one, the established one, the one everyone was watching, and choose the younger one, the overlooked one, the one nobody thought was going to be anything? Today, we are going to answer that question completely. We are going through every single time in the Bible that God chose the younger over the older, every case, every story. And at the end, we are going to arrive at a theological conclusion that I promise will change how you read your Bible and how you see your own life. Because this pattern was not written for ancient Israel. It was written for everyone who has ever felt like the overlooked one, the one nobody expected anything from, the one still waiting in the field while everyone else got the invitation. This video is for you. Let us go.
Abel over Cain. Genesis 4. Adam and Eve have two sons. Cain is the firstborn, the elder, the expected heir, the one who by every cultural and social convention of the ancient world should have carried the family blessing and the family name forward. Abel is the younger. Both brothers bring an offering to God. Cain brings the fruit of the ground, the produce of his work as a farmer. Abel brings the firstborn of his flock, the best of what he had. And God accepts Abel's offering and rejects Cain's. Now, most sermons focus on what Cain did next, the murder, the jealousy, the "am I my brother's keeper?" But stop before you get there, because the question that rarely gets asked is, why? Why did God accept Abel and reject Cain? The letter to the Hebrews gives us the clearest answer. Hebrews 11:4 says, "By faith, Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did." Faith, not age, not birth order, not seniority. Abel brought what he brought because he believed that what he was bringing mattered, that God was worth his best, his firstfruits, the thing that cost him something. Cain brought what was convenient, what was available, what required no sacrifice of the best. And here, at the very beginning of human history, the pattern is established. God does not operate by human convention. He does not distribute his favor based on who arrived first. He looks at the heart behind the offering. And the younger brother's heart was oriented toward God in a way the older brother's was not. Cain's response to being bypassed, the anger, the resentment, the murder, is also the first illustration of what happens when the older refuses to accept that God's choosing does not follow human logic. He could not accept that the younger was chosen, and it destroyed him. The pattern begins, but it is just getting started.
Isaac over Ishmael. Move forward to Abraham. God has made a staggering promise to this man, that his descendants will be as numerous as the stars, that through him all the nations of the earth will be blessed, that a great nation will come from him. There is one problem. Abraham and his wife Sarah have no children, and they are old, far past the age when children are naturally possible. So Sarah does what felt logical at the time. She offers her Egyptian servant Hagar to Abraham as a surrogate. Hagar conceives and gives birth to a son. His name is Ishmael. Ishmael is the firstborn son of Abraham. By every human convention, he should be the covenant heir, the one through whom the promise passes. For 13 years, he is Abraham's only son. He grows up expecting to inherit everything. Then God speaks. God tells Abraham and Sarah that Sarah will conceive and bear a son, not Hagar's son, Sarah's son. And this son, who has not yet been born, will be the one through whom the covenant continues. Sarah laughs. She is 90 years old. The idea is absurd. And then Isaac is born, the second son, the child of impossible circumstances, born to a woman decades past childbearing, named Laughter because nobody believed it could happen. And God makes it plain in Genesis 17:19, "My covenant I will establish with Isaac." Not Ishmael, Isaac. Ishmael is not abandoned. God blesses him and makes a nation from him as well. But the covenant, the specific promise, the lineage through which the Messiah will eventually come, passes through the second son, the impossible son, the one who should not have existed by any natural calculation. Notice the pattern developing. Cain was overlooked because of the condition of his heart, but Ishmael is not overlooked because of his heart. He is simply not the one God chose for this specific purpose. God is not punishing the firstborn. He is establishing something, that his choices are not determined by human birth order.
Jacob over Esau. Now the pattern becomes impossible to miss. Isaac grows up and marries Rebekah. Rebekah is pregnant with twins, and they are struggling inside her so intensely that she asks God what is happening. And God answers her with something extraordinary. Genesis 25:23. 2 nations are in your womb. 2 peoples from within you will be separated. 1 people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. Before the twins are even born, before either of them has done anything, before either of them has an offering to bring or a heart condition to evaluate, God declares, the older will serve the younger. The twins are born. Esau comes first, red, hairy, the picture of physical strength and vitality. Jacob comes second, grabbing his brother's heel as they emerge. Even his name means he grasps the heel, or he supplants. Esau grows up to be everything a firstborn son in the ancient world was supposed to be. A skilled hunter, a man's man, the kind of son that made Isaac's chest fill with pride. Isaac loved Esau because Esau brought him wild game. He was the son who delivered what his father wanted.
Jacob was quiet. He stayed near the tents. He was his mother's favorite. By ancient Near Eastern standards, he was the lesser son. And yet, God had declared before their birth, this is the one. Not because Jacob was morally superior. The rest of his story makes clear he was capable of significant deception and manipulation. But because God's choosing is not a merit system, it is a sovereign act. Romans 9:10-12 explains what happened in the womb of Rebekah as directly as the New Testament ever explains anything. Yet before the twins were born or had done anything good or bad, in order that God's purpose in election might stand, not by works but by him who calls, she was told, the older will serve the younger. God's purpose in election might stand, not your seniority, not your effort, not your position, God's purpose. Full stop.
Joseph over his 10 brothers. Jacob has 12 sons. Joseph is the 11th. Not just second, 11th. 10 older brothers stand between him and any conventional claim to family leadership. And yet, Jacob gives Joseph the coat, the sign of his special favor. And then the dreams began. Dreams in which Joseph's brothers bow down to him, in which the sun and moon and 11 stars all bow before him. Dreams that are not subtle, dreams that his brothers understand immediately and hate him for. His brothers' response to being bypassed is worth examining. They throw him in a pit. They sell him to Midianite traders. They tell his father he is dead. They spend the next 20 years trying to live in a world where the youngest one they sold into slavery is not going to become what he dreamed he would become. But the dream does not die when you throw the dreamer in a pit. Joseph goes to Egypt. He is falsely accused and imprisoned. He interprets dreams for fellow prisoners, a cupbearer and a baker, and asks the cupbearer to remember him when he is released. The cupbearer forgets him for 2 full years. And then Pharaoh has a dream, and nobody in Egypt can interpret it. And the cupbearer suddenly remembers the young Hebrew prisoner. And Joseph, the 11th son, the one who was sold, the one who was forgotten, stands before the most powerful man on earth and interprets his dream, and within 24 hours is appointed second in command over all of Egypt. Genesis 45:8 records what Joseph eventually says to the brothers who sold him. "It was not you who sent me here, but God." The pit was part of the journey, not the end of the story. 11 brothers older than Joseph, not one of them became what Joseph became, because God was not looking at birth certificates when he chose who would save the ancient world from famine.
Ephraim over Manasseh. This one is the most deliberate visual illustration of the pattern in the entire Bible. Joseph has 2 sons. Manasseh is the firstborn, Ephraim is the younger. Jacob, now elderly, nearly blind, is about to bless them. Joseph brings them to Jacob with the conventional arrangement: Manasseh the firstborn on Jacob's right to receive the greater blessing, Ephraim the younger on the left to receive the lesser. Jacob reaches out his hands to bless them and deliberately crosses them. His right hand, the greater blessing hand, goes onto Ephraim's head, his left hand onto Manasseh's. Joseph sees it and tries to correct it. He literally takes Jacob's right hand and tries to move it from Ephraim to Manasseh. "Not so, my father. This one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." And Jacob refuses. Genesis 48:19. "I know, my son, I know. He too will become a people, and he too will become great. Nevertheless, his younger brother will be greater than he. I know." Jacob is not confused. He is not making a mistake because he cannot see properly. He is making an entirely deliberate choice, crossing his hands, overriding the human convention, placing the greater blessing on the younger son. Because he has seen this pattern before. He lived this pattern. He was this pattern. He knows that God crosses his hands.
Gideon. Israel is under the oppression of the Midianites. For 7 years, the Midianites have raided their crops every harvest season, destroying everything, leaving Israel destitute. The people are hiding in caves, and God sends an angel to find his deliverer. The angel finds a man named Gideon, threshing wheat in a winepress, not on the threshing floor where wheat is supposed to be threshed, in a winepress, a hole in the ground, where he is hiding it from the Midianites. The angel appears and greets him with words that are almost darkly humorous given the circumstances. "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Gideon looks around. He is hiding in a hole, secretly threshing grain so the enemy does not take it. Mighty warrior. And when God calls him to deliver Israel, Gideon's response in Judges 6:15 is one of the most honest things anyone says to God in the entire Old Testament. "Pardon me, my Lord, but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." 2 layers of being overlooked. His tribe, Manasseh, was not one of the prominent tribes of Israel, and within that already marginal tribe, his clan was the weakest, and within that already weak clan, he was the least, the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. God's response? "I will be with you." Not, "You are not as weak as you think," not, "You have hidden strengths you have not discovered yet." Just, "I will be with you." The weakness is real, but I am more real than the weakness. Gideon goes on to deliver Israel with 300 men against an army so large the Bible describes them as thick as locusts. He starts in the winepress. He ends as a national deliverer, the least in the weakest family of the weakest tribe. Chosen. Jephthah. Jephthah is a case so extreme it seems almost deliberately ironic. He is the son of Gilead, but his mother was a prostitute. His half-brothers, the legitimate sons, the ones with the proper bloodline, drive him away from home. Judges 11:2 records their reasoning with brutal simplicity. "You are not going to get any inheritance in our family because you are the son of another woman." He is not just the younger, he is the illegitimate one, the one with no claim, no standing, no right to anything. He ends up in a place called Tob, with a group of what the Bible calls worthless fellows, outcasts and adventurers who rally around him because of his natural leadership ability. And then Ammon threatens Israel, and the elders of Gilead, the very community that drove him out, the very brothers who told him he had no inheritance, come to him, desperate because they need him. Judges 11:6. "Come, be our commanders so we can fight the Ammonites." The one they rejected becomes the one they cannot survive without. He goes from having no inheritance to leading the nation, from the illegitimate outsider to the commander of Israel's armies. God did not let the rejection define the destination. He let the rejection prepare the leader. Saul, from Benjamin. When Israel demands a king, against God's advice, but within his permission, God chooses Saul. And the choice is deliberately paradoxical. Of all the 12 tribes of Israel, Benjamin was the smallest, the youngest, the tribe that had been nearly wiped out in a civil war recorded at the end of the book of Judges. It was the tribe you would least expect to produce the first king. And then within that smallest tribe, Saul is hiding among the baggage on the day he is supposed to be crowned. 1 Samuel 10:22 records the scene with a kind of divine comedy. The people ask, "Has the man come here yet?" And the Lord says, "He has hidden himself among the supplies." The first king of Israel was found hiding in the luggage. He is from the smallest tribe. He is hiding when everyone is looking for him. He does not seek the position. He does not campaign for it. He does not present himself. God points to him and says, "This is the one." Saul's later failure does not undermine the principle of the choice. It establishes something else, that being chosen is not the same as being faithful to the choosing, but the choice itself follows the pattern completely. Smallest tribe, hidden candidate, unexpected. David over his 7 brothers. This is the most famous instance of the pattern, and the one the Bible itself uses to explain the principle behind all the others. Samuel is sent by God to the house of Jesse in Bethlehem to anoint the next king of Israel. Jesse has 8 sons. He brings them out one by one before Samuel, starting with Eliab, the eldest. Eliab is impressive, tall, strong, commanding. Samuel looks at him and thinks, surely this is the Lord's anointed. And God says something that is one of the most important sentences in the entire Old Testament. 1 Samuel 16:7. Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. 7 sons pass before Samuel, 7 times, not this one. Samuel asks Jesse, "Are these all the sons you have?" Jesse's answer is extraordinary in its casualness. There is still the youngest. He is tending the sheep. The youngest. He is not even in the room. He wasn't invited to the ceremony. He was not considered worth calling in from the field. His own father did not think to include him when Samuel came looking for a king. He is out with the sheep, alone, doing the job nobody else wanted. The forgotten son of a family that was itself from an unremarkable town in an unremarkable region. Send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives. David comes in from the field, probably still smelling of sheep, still dusty from the road, and God says, "Rise and anoint him. This is the one." And here is what most people miss about David's story. Those years alone in the field with the sheep, the years nobody was watching, the years his family forgot to include him, the years he was just the youngest doing the unglamorous work, those were not wasted years, those were preparation years. In those fields, he learned to play the harp that would soothe the tormented king. He learned to kill the lion and the bear that prepared him for Goliath. He learned to be alone with God in a way that produced the Psalms that the entire world still reads 3,000 years later. The overlooked season is never wasted. God is always working in the field, even when nobody invited you to the ceremony. Solomon over Adonijah. As David approaches death, his son Adonijah, the 4th-born but oldest surviving son, moves to claim the throne. 1 Kings 1:5 records that he put himself forward and said, "I will be king." He had the chariots and the horsemen. He had the support of Joab, the military commander, and Abiathar, the priest. He threw himself a coronation party and invited all the king's sons, except one, except Solomon. Solomon was not Adonijah's older rival. He was his younger brother. And he had not declared himself anything. He had not campaigned. He had not gathered supporters. He was not putting himself forward. But God had told David something that David had apparently not yet made publicly clear. Solomon was the one God had chosen to build the temple. Solomon was the one God had designated as the next king. Nathan the prophet and Bathsheba go to the aged David. They remind him of the promise. David acts immediately. Solomon is anointed king while Adonijah's party is still in progress. And when the sound of the trumpet and the shouting reaches Adonijah's feast, the guests begin to slip away one by one, until Adonijah is left alone, a man who crowned himself king for one afternoon and ended up fleeing to grab the horns of the altar for safety. The one who put himself forward was bypassed. The one who was excluded from the party became the king.
Moses over Aaron. Moses is the younger brother. Aaron is 3 years older. When God calls Moses at the burning bush, he is calling the younger sibling to lead the mission. And Moses, characteristically, resists. One of his objections is that he is not a good speaker. He is slow of speech. He does not know how to talk to people. God's response is to give him Aaron as his spokesman. Aaron, the older brother, becomes the mouth. Moses, the younger brother, becomes the leader. The older serves the younger, exactly as God declared what happened with Jacob and Esau. But notice something in the dynamic. Aaron is 3 years older. He was presumably the one who grew up as the respected elder sibling. He was the one with the established priestly family. He was the one who had stayed in Egypt and built relationships in the Hebrew community while Moses was in exile in Midian for 40 years. By every human convention, Aaron should have been leading the mission. He was older, more connected, more established in the community. God sent the younger, the exile, the man who had been away for 40 years, the one who said he could not even speak properly. And Aaron, to his enormous credit, in this instance at least, accepted it. He walked out into the desert to meet his younger brother and accepted the role of supporting the one God had chosen, even though by birth he had every right to expect to be leading.
Rachel over Leah. This instance flips the direction slightly, but the principle is the same. Jacob loves Rachel. He works 7 years for her. On the wedding night, Laban deceives him and substitutes Leah, the older daughter, for Rachel. Jacob wakes up the next morning and discovers he has married the wrong woman. He works another 7 years for Rachel. Throughout the whole narrative, Leah is the older, the established, the first wife. Rachel is the younger, the desired one, the second wife in terms of the marriage ceremony. Leah is fertile. She has child after child while Rachel is barren. But Jacob's love for Rachel never wavers. And when Rachel finally conceives, first Joseph, eventually Benjamin, those are the sons who carry the most significant roles in the story. Joseph, who saves the world. Benjamin, from whose tribe Saul, the first king, and Paul, the apostle, would come. The older Leah is not unloved by God. He opens her womb and gives her sons. But the chosen one, the one Jacob's heart was always oriented toward, was Rachel, the younger. And the line through which the Messiah would eventually come passes through Leah's son, Judah, which is the one exception to the pattern in this chapter that actually proves the rule. Even when God uses Leah's line for the Messiah, he uses it through Judah, not Reuben, the firstborn. Samuel over the sons of Eli. Eli is the high priest of Israel. He has 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas. They are the established religious leadership, the next generation of the priestly family, the expected inheritors of the spiritual authority of Israel. They are corrupt. 1 Samuel 2 describes them as scoundrels who had no regard for the Lord. They were sleeping with the women who served at the entrance to the tent of meeting. They were taking the best portions of the sacrifices for themselves. They were abusing their position in every way imaginable. And sleeping in the same temple as a young boy given to God by his previously barren mother Hannah was Samuel. Not a priest's son, not from a priestly family, not established, not expected. A child who had been brought to the temple because his mother made a desperate vow to God when she thought she would never conceive. 3 times God calls Samuel's name in the night. 3 times Samuel thinks it is Eli calling him and runs to the old priest. Eli, to his credit, eventually understands what is happening and tells the boy how to respond. "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." And God begins speaking to Samuel, not to Hophni and Phinehas, the legitimate heirs, not even primarily to Eli, the established priest, to the young boy sleeping on the floor of the temple. 1 Samuel 3:19 records the result. The Lord was with Samuel as he grew up, and he let none of Samuel's words fall to the ground. Every word Samuel spoke came to pass. While the sons of Eli died in battle on the same day, The Ark of the Covenant was captured, and Eli himself fell backward from his chair and died when he heard the news. The established priestly family was finished. The child nobody expected to be anything became the last judge and the first kingmaker of Israel.
Everything we have seen so far has been building toward this. Every younger son chosen over the older, every overlooked figure raised up, every bypassed candidate elevated. All of it was pointing forward, like arrows in a quiver, all aimed at the same target. The target is a stable in Bethlehem. Jesus born in Nazareth. When the Son of God enters the world, he does not enter through the expected door. He does not arrive in Rome, the center of world power. He does not arrive in Athens, the center of human wisdom. He does not even arrive in Jerusalem, the holy city, the city of David, the place where the Messiah was expected to appear in glory. He arrives in Bethlehem, a village so small that the prophet Micah, writing 700 years before the birth, calls it too small to be among the clans of Judah. The kind of place that does not appear on the important maps. The kind of place people are from, not the kind of place anything significant happens. And even within that small town, he does not arrive in an inn or a home. He arrives in a stable, born among the animals, laid in a feeding trough. His first visitors are not dignitaries or priests or Sanhedrin members. They are shepherds, workers at the bottom of the social ladder, people whose testimony was considered legally inadmissible in Jewish courts, people who could not even participate in temple worship properly because of the nature of their work. And then he grows up in Nazareth. Nazareth is so unremarkable in the first century that when Nathanael hears this is where Jesus is from, he says, "Can anything good come from Nazareth?" That is not just casual skepticism, that is the cultural reality of the town. It was the kind of place that produced nothing notable, the kind of place people left as quickly as they could. Nathanael's question perfectly captures what the incarnation looks like from the outside. God becomes a human being, and the first thing people think when they hear where he is from is, "Really? From there?" And then when he begins his ministry, he does not set up headquarters in Jerusalem. He operates in Galilee, the northern region, the backwater, the place that the religious establishment in Jerusalem regarded as spiritually inferior, culturally mixed, and theologically suspect. Everything about the geography of the incarnation follows the pattern, not the first city, not the expected town, not the prestigious location, the small, the overlooked, the unexpected. God has a consistent address. It is always somewhere nobody thought to look.
So why does God do this? 14 times, across every major section of Scripture, the same pattern. The younger chosen, the overlooked elevated, the unexpected one stepping into what everyone assumed belonged to someone else. It is not random, it is not coincidence, and it is not God feeling sorry for the underdog. 1 Corinthians 1:27 gives you the answer in one sentence. God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. And then verse 29 tells you exactly why, so that no one may boast before him. That is the whole reason. When God chooses David, the forgotten youngest son still in the field, nobody can explain that through human logic. When God chooses Gideon, the least in the weakest family of the weakest tribe, nobody can say, of course, he was the obvious candidate. When God chooses a stable in Bethlehem over a palace in Jerusalem, nobody can credit the outcome to the right connections or the right family name. The only explanation that fits is God. And that is precisely the point. God consistently bypasses the expected, the established, and the qualified, so that when the blessing comes, the glory can only go to one place. Not to the firstborn, not to the most qualified, not to the one who arrived first. To the God who crossed his hands over Ephraim, who crosses his hands still, and gives the greater blessing to the one nobody was watching. If this opened up the Bible for you in a new way, share it with someone who needs to see it. Subscribe for more content that goes this deep. God bless you.